Oh, very fragrance driven. Look at that. We got little test tubes of all different types of smells.
Aromatics.
Which leads us in because welcome back. We've got some very unusual programming for you today. I'm your host, Rowan Cook. I make coffee on the internet.
And I'm Ben Bicknell. I judge people who make coffee, but only in competitions.
And together we are
It's Just Coffee.
And today we have no guest because you're the best guest that we could possibly get.
Oh, shucks.
Because we've had a lot of people on the pod recently, some of the most iconic coffee professionals from around the world.
Amazing lineup.
And it's been getting my head thinking. It's been getting my taste buds tingling. And I've been thinking about all the amazing coffees that we've been talking about. But I kind of wanted to look at how do we actually taste coffee? How do we break down the taste, the flavor notes, the aromas, all those kind of things? And I was looking at guests that we could get. And I'm like, hello, Rowan. We got Ben Bicknell right here, Q grader, sensory expert, trainer. And I'm like, maybe you can just teach me a little bit about tasting coffee and also just how to talk about it, how to communicate about it. And I think we probably have a lot of listeners out there that would like to learn a lot about that as well.
Yeah, I am here for you, Ron. I'm here for you.
You're always here for me. Don't go anywhere. We're going to have a quick word from one of our sponsors, Apex Lab. Elevate your coffee experience with Apex Lab Mineral Concentrates. Apex Lab's precision-engineered formulas, including tonic, jam, and lilac, are designed to enhance the coffee's natural flavors. Not going to change it, it's just going to enhance it. It's going to bring out the vibrant acidity, the rich sweetness, or if you use lilac, it might bring out those delicate floral notes that you've been looking for. Trusted by world-class cafes and even barista champions, Apex Lab helps you unlock your coffee's full potential. Discover more at apexlab.com. Wait, where was that again, Sonam?
The internet.
Oh, okay. Thought I was going to say the website. Thanks.
Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing sponsors at Eco Barista. The reason I sound like this is because they got massages at our stand at Mice, and so I'm getting a massage while recording this message for you. They're the best sponsor of the pod that we could have had. They have the best eco products. This probably sounds really pornographic, but it's not. I'm just getting a massage. They have the best eco-friendly coffee products. They got coffee bags that you can design yourself. They got cups. They got iced coffee cups. They got everything you need. So make sure to support them because they support us. Head to ecobarista.com.au and get 15% off your first purchase when you sign up. Oh, mama, that's good.
Where do we get started on this type of journey?
Yeah, well, I think let's try maybe break down a little bit of the language about what we are talking about when we say flavour, and then maybe come up with some little exercises that people can do back at their workplace to start developing those. So I guess when we take it right from the top, right, flavour is actually a combination of taste types and aroma. And you've probably heard that idea that kind of a lot of what we taste is actually comes from aroma, right?
Oh, X% of taste or flavor is smell.
Yeah, the number that's kind of generally thrown around is that about 80% of everything you call flavor is actually from an aroma kind of experience. And so taste and flavor sound like really similar words. We probably use them a lot interchangeably. But taste is actually thinking about the different taste types or modalities that are out there.
Ding, ding. I think I'm going to start a ding, ding counter on this show. Whenever you say something that I don't know, I'm going to ding, ding you.
Okay.
A modality.
Well, just think about it like a different mode or different type of tasting. So,
like salty, sweet, umami, that kind of thing.
And so when we talk about the key tastes that are out there, there's 5 that are generally identified or that are kind of broadly acknowledged. So there's sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. Umami, that's right, which is the savory characteristic. It's often referred to as like MSG, but it's also in like cheese and in kind of meats and things like that. So it's a savory experience. So there's those 5 key taste modalities or taste types that are out there. The others that we're pretty familiar with, right? Well, what is sweet, acidic, and what is salty and bitter. There's actually a couple of others that researchers are kind of throwing around as maybe adding as the 6th and the 7th, which are kind of going to be, it's an interesting conversation about, again, like I said, it's a complex sensory experience, right? We don't just, suddenly we're just tasting sweet. It's in combination with a lot of other things. And so there's actually fatty as well, or fat.
The fatty taste.
Yeah, as a distinct kind of characteristic from the texture or the aroma of fat. So that's kind of going to be an interesting addition.
Texture into this.
Yeah, definitely.
Texture with taste.
Well, if you think about bitterness, it doesn't kind of come across as what you traditionally kind of go, oh, that's a taste. It's kind of more of a reaction, right, that you get of a prickling kind of like astringent sensation. And then the other one that I think is really interesting, I don't know a huge amount about it, to be honest, but it's kokumi. And it's another Japanese term, I believe, that's
Kokumi.
kokumi.
Kokuyu.
Kokumi. You are me.
Yeah.
I am you. Kokumi.
We are.
We are kokumi. Well, I don't know. It depends.
What's kokumi?
We're of a certain age, and it is about the flavor depth and roundness that comes from aged kind of foodstuffs.
Is there an example?
Yeah, well, cheese is a great example,
All right.
but also like things like, what else would be a good example of like fermented foods that have kind of started breaking down and you slow cook, slow age, or they develop over
Maybe
time.
something that had been in parallel with umami, almost like a different kind of
Yeah.
subcategory of that.
I think there's from what I understand, there's a bit of crossover between them, but kokumi is the idea of that roundness and depth versus the savoriness
Right.
that is umami. So I guess maybe it's a bit of that complexity. It plays definitely emotionally into this idea of like that slow food movement of like slow fermented things. But anyway, these are our key different taste modalities. And if we kind of come back up to the top, is like what do you actually want to learn tasting for? Like what are you trying to build your sensory skills for?
I think for me, it's being able to talk and communicate about what I'm drinking, but also helping others to do that kind of thing. Because when everyone talks about it, so often people are just trying to click and be like, oh, that thing, like I know what it is, I can't verbalize it. And I think it's just getting that skill set to be able to verbalize the experience. So A, you can describe what something is like, but also B, communicate to someone else what you want.
Yeah, I think it's pretty important because it's where we would capture a lot of value of specialty coffee, right? If we can't, we know that specialty coffee tastes unique and it tastes different. It is special from just a mass commodity coffee. But if we can't put words to it and help other people kind of navigate and find that, then maybe we lose some of that specialness. I guess in that sense then, let's have a think about, from a taste modality point of view, the key thing that you really want to learn as a coffee specialist is about being aware of what you're perceiving on your palate as you taste something, and then being able to attach language to it. So you've got that sensory stimuli, and then you've got a word that you connect with that stimuli. And that's kind of called your sensory memory. And you can build and develop that. And we also want to use language that we can use to communicate, which means like a common language. It's not coming up with some random other description or term, right? Like I feel like you'll come up with a few of those. And I expect that on the sensory dictionary of Rowan is going to be very diverse.
I'm writing my own book, baby.
Yeah. But so let's think about that from the different taste modalities that we talked about. So we've got predominantly sweet and sour would be major ones in coffee, as well as some bitterness that's always present there. Salty is kind of interesting. It's much more prevalent in Canephora or like Robusta coffees, that you can actually have, a pretty consistent place for saltiness in there. And it's kind of interesting. I think we talked with some of our guests about that rise of like salted caramel as flavor profiles, and that's a really trending space. Makes it interesting for like sweet kind of Arabica plus a little salty Robusta is kind of could be the blend of the future. Umami doesn't play a huge role in coffee, but there's
Not
a
with
little
that attitude.
Hey, there could be a moment, a place for
I'm
it in
getting
time.
that miso blend cappuccino is coming at you.
I think it's an interesting. I've had some signature drinks on the world stage that have been down that savory path.
Oh, right.
They're pretty fascinating, quite challenging.
What about that? What was it? The like beef noodle soup coffee you had? Was that like kind of in that world?
Yep, exactly. That was definitely in that space. And you do see like a bit of crossover of savory, kind of people using coffee for savory recipes.
And so as we do this, can I just interrupt you quickly?
Please.
But just let's get a little practical right here on the moment. We're all sitting around drinking a cup of coffee.
Yes.
Run me through, give me your process of analyzing it.
What's happening here? Oh, I feel like it's a El Salvadorian natural anaerobic.
Oh, it is. It is. El Salvador
wow.
anaerobic natural.
Well, I think this is a perfect example, right? You get handed a cup of coffee, or maybe there's a new coffee that comes on bar. What do you do to learn about it so that then you can communicate it, and also to navigate to your preferences? We've talked with a few of our guests about buying coffee or roasting coffee, or like the episode with Klaus where he was talking about this is what I really like and we don't like that. They hate bitterness.
Yeah.
Right. And so you need to know, how do you perceive that? How do you pick apart, I don't like this for what reason? So a good way of doing it is sweet, acidic, and maybe some bitter and a little bit of salty. You can actually practice this by creating some water solutions back at your workplace. It's really easy. So, and we do this in the Q-Grader course where we have these different taste kind of combinations. And the first thing that you want to do is probably learn to identify just the individual taste type. All right, so get some water, standardize the amount. Let's say it's like 500 milliliters, and you want to add a certain amount of caster sugar to it. And you know, that is definitely going to be just sweet, okay? Our threshold for sugar is actually quite high in that we don't taste it as readily as some of the other sensations, because it's kind of really just our body saying, hey, you can have as much of this as you want. It's energy for growth. So you might want to add like to 500 milliliters, you could add, you know, say 10 grams of sugar. Okay, it's a fair bit. And you can taste that. And then you can make another solution where you add some citric acid powder, pretty easily bought in most places in like every supermarket. Yeah. A very small amount of that though. You might only want like 1.5 grams in there because our threshold for acidity is a lot higher. It's a lot lower. Sorry, it's a lot lower. We can sense acidity a lot easier. Bitterness is a little bit difficult to get hold of. You know, caffeine powder is not like easily accessible. So maybe focus on like salt is kind of another one. So you can just use table salt and adding again a small amount of that in somewhere in between. So let's say maybe you added like 4 grams of salt. So you've got these 3 solutions, a little bit of caster sugar in one, a little bit of citric acid in another, and a little bit of salt in the third. And you can just taste those water solutions and you're immediately going to go, okay, I know these are those specific taste modalities. And what you want to do is pay attention to where your palate is activating. So on your tongue.
Okay, see, this is more interesting. I was going to go like, okay, drinking water with sugar in it.
Yeah.
I'll know what sweet is. But yeah, more being aware and taking note of what's happening on your tongue.
Yes.
There's one thing I started doing when I started taking cooking a bit more seriously, maybe like 8 years ago, 10 years ago, was every time I was making a recipe at that point, I would take the individual like spice or the herb or whatever it was, and I would just smell and take in that one thing, even taste a little bit. And it was just stupid stuff. I remember being like a kid and actually just eating a coriander seed.
Yep.
For the first time, I'm like, oh, that's the flavor in dukkha. Or like in the dukkha that I've had, like cool. And just implanting those like flavor memories in your mind or taste, whatever it is, flavor. Now I'm broken up between flavor and taste. Flavor memories in your mind to remember it.
Yeah, I think that's a great, just easy approach. It's just what we're talking about here is awareness. So paying attention to what you're having and what you're experiencing. And then, as I said, trying to put a word to it. So the fact that you took it out of a packet that said coriander seed and then you ate it, you had a sensory stimulus and you saw the word coriander seed and you're like, okay, I'm locking that in.
I did do a wanky wine course once where the guy was like, every time I go to a restaurant, I pick up the plate and I smell every individual piece on the plate because I need to understand. I'm like, okay, I get it, but it might be a bit much sitting in the middle of a restaurant.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know how you do that with
just
coffee.
Woofing in a plate.
Just inhaling it. Yeah, well, let's not do that. But the thing with this exercise, if you create those 3 different solutions, taste them, and as I said, just pay attention to where on your palate you're perceiving those different things. There's the old idea of like a tongue map, and you can kind of Google this pretty easily, but it basically says that we perceive different tastes on different locations on our tongue. And in general, it's true that you have particular taste buds, or technically called papillae.
Ding, ding. Okay, they're called papillae?
They're called papillae.
Papillele.
So they're the nerve ending that basically takes the chemical signals of these different experiences and transmits them, right? So they're the receptors, and that they are placed in different locations around your tongue. So bitterness kind of receptors tend to be right up the back of your palate, sweetness up the top, acidity for most people on the sides. Yeah. The tongue map's kind of been a little bit disproven, or at least not the kind of be all and end all, because you know when you burn your tongue, you can still taste something sweet. even though that tip of your tongue is where most of those sweet receptors are. Yeah. So anyway, pay attention to where your tongue is activating, because then when you go to drink a coffee, if you're finding like, wow, I'm getting a big sensation in this particular part on my palate, you're like, oh, that's the acidity. That's what it is. And so we start having like pretty objective linkages because you literally added citric acid and that's where it's tasting. So now you're starting to connect the dots. The next piece of advice I think would be a fun exercise for you would then to be to practice intensity levels, right? So now when is something more sweet or less sweet? And how does that kind of experience on your palate? So you can do that pretty easily by taking that kind of solution that we talked about and creating ones on either side. So create a lower intensity version and
5
a
gram,
higher
10 gram, 15 gram sugar kind of thing.
Exactly. Yep. And then like literally taste them blind if you can. And always tasting these things blind is the best way of locking it in, because you're not, if you know it's the high intensity one, you've mentally got this confirmation bias and you're like, oh yeah, that's high intensity, taste it. Yeah, it's strong, whatever. But if you're hunting for it, you're like, oh, which one's the lowest? Which one's the highest? I think you have a better experience with it. And then you can do the same with the sour and the salty to kind of work on that. Another really good experience, it's not quite a taste modality, but a major component of coffee is like the body or the mouthfeel of the coffee. I found that tomato juice, weirdly, is actually a really good, just quick and easy reference for this. So if you get like a container of just tomato juice from the supermarket, it doesn't necessarily taste great.
Right, we're making Bloody Marys. That's fine.
That's it. There's a lot of use afterwards, but that's got quite a thick kind of texture to it. It's got
it's viscous.
It's viscous. And then if you cut some of it with like 50% water or 25% water, you've got different levels of body. So that's kind of a good way to just highlight that intensity. Is there a particular taste type out of those that you're really attracted to in coffee?
In coffee, sweetness and acidity is kind of like they're the two kind of main ones. But I'm definitely, it kind of depends on the mood and where you're going. But yeah, when it's a filter coffee or something like that, definitely like a bit more acidity in it. And what else do we talk about? Not really into salty coffees, interestingly.
Yep.
Umami coffees, not for me.
What about bitterness in coffee?
I think, the bitterness, natural bitterness that is there is fine. Obviously, I don't like it when it's like exacerbated by over roasting and that kind of thing.
Yep.
But I like bitter, aperitifs or like whatever. I like,
Campari.
Stars, or that kind of thing. So yeah, I like bitterness.
Yeah. So we can kind of learn these things. I think that's the interesting thing as well, is that like our bodies naturally will steer us towards or away from particular tastes because of our evolutionary kind of biology. Bitterness is generally a poison, right? So it's like, don't eat that. But as we grow up, we kind of become more familiar with it.
Yeah. And is it the growing up, or is it even like as a child, there's like a protection, but like then a lot of bitter things now are like anti-cancer, you know, kind of stuff, like a lot of vegetables and those kind of things. And so I don't know if this is true at all. I was reading a thing about how evolutionary as we get older, that's why our flavors adjust to handle those things more. Like, our kids I think about it, like as a kid eating broccoli, like my mouth would be like blowing up, like, how could I ever eat this? And now as an adult, I'm like, why did I ever care? Like, this is great. Whatever. It's not that big of a deal.
No, you're exactly right. In fact, when we're born, we have about 4 times the amount of literally taste receptors of taste buds as we do when we become adults. So they kind of like fade off. So you think about a baby. I know you've kind of been feeding your baby like Whole Foods recently. The volume is turned up on every sensory stimulus coming in.
Right. So it must be pretty tough when like parents are trying to force feed their children to eat something. It's like, you can't comprehend what that tastes like to them right now. They're like, absolutely not.
They're like, this sounds like a bad idea. Although feeding your child a slice of lemon is pretty hilarious.
Yeah, I'll definitely give that a go. So, also throwing cheese on their face, just like a slice of cheese.
You just throw cheese on
just like a beat, they're crying, like hurl a slice of cheese and just...
Is that just child services coming from you?
If you want child services, get on TikTok. The old cheese slice throw is everywhere.
That's a thing.
Absolutely.
Okay,
go home and throw a slice of cheese on your child's face.
Sensory adaptation there.
Yeah. But wait, sorry, I know we talked about it. Is it wrong? I want to hear your analysis on the
analysis
coffee.
on this coffee.
Yeah, because I think like my My flavor profile, like my tasting notes, I think are pretty good in like a nice vague kind of way. It's just specificity that I probably lack a little bit of.
Yeah. Yep.
Like I'll be like, oh yeah, that's like sweet red fruit and it's a bit bright or whatever. But I'm
Yeah.
not like, that's a cranberry.
And you can kind of see from what we're talking about with those key like tastes, right? Like sweet, sour, salty, bitter. None of them are very descriptive, right? They're kind of a pretty narrow focus. And that's where aroma really kicks in, that even when we drink something like a cup of coffee, that thing that I'm like tasting in there is actually triggered by a lot of aromatic kind of compounds. And so as we swallow it, they kind of waft back up the rear of our kind of nasal cavity, or when we smell ground coffee. Oh, yeah.
Look dirty to me.
Well, what we're really talking about is retronasal inhalation.
Oh, ding, 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 ding. Retronasal inhalation? That's
Yeah.
the name of my high school rock band.
That's pretty cool. I'd listen to that.
Retronasal inhalation. Retronasal inhalation. That's actually the Beastie
Keep going.
Boys.
I mean, that's how it was a short-lived.
Yeah, we didn't do well.
Well, look, we're getting technical here, but it's okay. We're a technical crew.
Yeah, but you explained it in layman's. It's the coffee wafting up the back of your throat. That's the layman's, and then retronasal inhalation is the technical term.
Yeah, there's two ways that we get aroma in, right?
Yeah.
One is through our nose as we smell. So when you get a fresh cup of coffee, you're smelling it, or if you smell the dry grounds before you start brewing or cupping.
Yep.
And that's technically is called orthonasal inhalation, kind of going up through here.
Orthonasal.
So there's orthonasal and then retronasal it's the rear of the nasal kind of cavity, right?
Yep.
The retro. And so that's when we swallow anything that all of those aromatic compounds just waft back up and they're connected through our throat into our nose. And we kind of pick up all of those aromas. But yeah, going back to an actual cup of coffee right here in front of us, tasting this. I mean, if we were talking about those kind of key taste components, it's a pretty soft level of acidity. Like it's kind of down on a lower intensity threshold there. It's kind of a little bit of a malic acidity, which is kind of like a green apple style acidity. A little bit winey as well. So it kind of has that. The acidity, even though it's soft, is pretty nice quality, I think. Kind of a little complex, a little bit of red apple, a little bit of that winey characteristic, which is generally comes from acetic acid, right? Which is kind of that vinegar acid, but in a nice way in wine, not a glass of vinegar. But I think that this has got a medium level of bitterness to it as well. And then the tactile experience, which is like how we talk about body and the texture of the mouthfeel, right? The tactile of it is like a little bit grainy, a little drying on there. And so I think there's some interesting things just on the taste and those different attributes. On the flavor front, as we talked about, we really need some aroma references to work from, right? Once we get there. And there's different ways that you can build that up. The interesting thing is, if we said as a professional coffee taster, aroma is actually, and your aroma memory is probably the biggest advantage you have as a coffee professional. And so you really want to build that up by crushing coriander seeds and smelling those, smelling your plate if you're a weird wine educator person. But yeah, you really want to build up those aroma references.
Yeah, absolutely. Where does it sit on that? Maybe it's like the winey element that you're speaking to, but especially when you get these like anaerobics and anaerobic naturals and that, and you get that kind of like funky, like there's just that, is it like fermenty, or there's just that something to it that's like a bit funky. Like where does that sit?
Yeah, I think that there's kind of an interesting combination of different types of acidity that are going in there, as well as that fine balance between sweet and acid. And that's always an interesting thing, is that we can talk about these things individually, like sweetness, acidity, bitterness, but they also interact. It's a complex thing. And so they kind of modulate each other, right? So it's like the best example is the old school lemonade. Squeeze a whole bunch of lemons in there and you drink just that straight lemon juice. It's going to be highly intense acidity. It's going to taste pretty sour and sharp. But you add a small amount of sugar into that same lemon juice, and suddenly the balance is quite different. Your perceived acidity has softened down.
Yeah, even though there's the same amount of lemon juice in your mouth.
Exactly.
you're not experiencing it in the same way.
Exactly. So they modulate when they basically interact and change our perceptions of it. And I think that that's where, in this case, for example, we've got this is a big anaerobic kind of natural. We've got some sweetness, we've got some acidity, and then we've also got some of these aroma kind of compounds of the fruit that are coming in there. I would say that with some of the anaerobics and the big naturals that there's different types of acid that you can get in here. I don't know if it's true. I'd be interested if anyone knows to kind of let us know. But there's a type of acid called butyric acid, which is like the vomit kind of acid, right? It's not good. It's like rotten vomit. But I kind of wonder when anaerobic naturals go bad, is it butyric acid that's inside
The
there?
old vomit coffee.
Yeah, it's like that. Funky can mean positive for some people and like a little interesting and dynamic, but funky can also mean rotten for others. And there's that line to cross between, is this big and fruity or is this actually rotten fruit?
Yeah. Yeah, fair. So I would have, when I have this coffee, I mean, it's also funny because it's changed a lot
As it's cooled.
as it's cooled.
Yeah.
I'm definitely at the start, there was almost, and sometimes I think sometimes certain elements like the funkiness sometimes like perceives me into a world that maybe isn't there as much, or it kind of blends. Like I'm like, it always takes me to like a bit of a tropical vibe when I get that funkiness kind of thing. But it definitely feels like that's softened a bit as it's cooled.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't have for a filter, I wouldn't have called out the bitterness as much in this, but I would say it has that drying characteristic at the end that's kind of getting up in the back of my mouth.
That tactile kind of
tactile feel, yeah.
Which is generally something we all try and steer away from, I think, with like certainly with filter coffees, we kind of want something a little bit cleaner, which generally talks to the aftertaste.
Yeah. And also the funny thing is sometimes maybe fruitier coffees, maybe my brain also naturally links to acidity and being like, oh, but when I stop and I drink this, like when you were like lower acidity, as I'd sip it, I'm like, yeah, I'm not activating on the side.
There's not much happening here.
There's nothing much happening on the side of my tongue as I drink that. So it kind of helps already just from this, having those singular tactile things allows me to analyze it in a way going, am I reacting this way? Am I getting this experience to really separate some things? Because as you said, it's complex and we need as many rules and guides as possible to help, communicate it. Otherwise it will get blurry.
And I think this space, like these bigger anaerobic coffees that are becoming more kind of common around, like people have tried them, it's kind of getting a little bit into mainstream, are kind of interesting because they generally have a high flavor intensity to them, right? There's a lot of different components in there. And they're the kinds of flavors that make you think of sweet things, right? Like fruits and berries and
red lollies and blah,
exactly,
blah, blah.
like candy stuff. But it's interesting because I wouldn't say this is a particularly sweet coffee.
No.
So there's the aroma compounds that lead your mind down the path of thinking of sweet things. And then you're like, well, when you kind of go, how could this coffee be better? It could have those flavors, but also a little bit more sweetness to add to the balance in the cup.
Yep.
So yeah, some practices that people can go away and do is make some water solutions. They're pretty readily out there. They're called like the sensory skills test is kind of out there a bit in coffee, and we can we'll see if we can publish some of those as well, little recipes. But do some citric acid, some salt, and some sugar. And first thing is taste them individually. Then do some different intensities of each. See if you can kind of rate how intense or not they are, and then combine them. So add some salt and some sour together and see, I know I added definitely 4 grams, like level 2 of the sugar in here, and then level 1 of the sour added changes my perception of that.
Funny, I was going to make a joke of like, and then make a cocktail, just mix them up. And that's exactly what you do to see how they affect with one another and how it plays. Is there any, I guess you can't, it's that interesting thing of sometimes when you speak to cocktail, like to bartenders and that, there's like ratios that we use in general for a cocktail. Like there should be X amount of grams of sugar to X amount of liquid to this and this and this. And I guess that's just playing off that balancing act, right? Of somewhere to start, you can evolve it obviously from there. But obviously harder to do with coffee.
Well, it comes back to that idea of balance in the cup. And there's literally a kind of a measure and a score of that on the cupping form, for example. But it's like how those different components actually play together. They could be good in isolation, but are they meshing together to be something a little bit more harmonious?
Was there anything else? What else can people do? So I've got the water test.
I think, the
solution test.
And the tomato juice test.
Tomato juice.
Remember, that one's a good one for
that's a good one if you need to have a party and do
just get some
Bloody Marys. But you can also check body and viscosity.
Body Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
Something like that. Is that a
Body
new
Mary
cocktail? The Bloody Mary. I feel like Proud Mary needs to launch that. I did mention that to someone. There's the Bloody Mary, Proud Mary.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good way to start in terms of different tastes. You can really do a deep dive into acidity. I think that's kind of, one of the really treasured parts about great coffee is high quality acidity. And there's a number of different types out there. And it's useful, I think, for people to learn what kinds of acid are driving the flavor profile. You've got a number of like organically occurring kind of acids in coffee, quite a range of them. The biggest one is actually one that we don't tend to taste if the roasting is done well, which is chlorogenic acid.
Right.
And so that's kind of, if you think about like the idea of chlorophylls and kind of green vegetables.
More like borophyll.
Is that what you think of my podcasting
No, it's
here?
from Billy Madison.
Oh, I don't know that one.
I'm quoting it. Yeah, he's in class and the guy says chlorophyll. He goes, more like borophyll.
This is like bad Billy Madison.
Yeah.
Bad.
No, I love chlorophyll.
Okay,
Continue.
you love it. Yeah. It's the health kick.
Yeah.
But there was a real thing that was going there for a while about people trying to brew up green coffee. Did you see that?
Oh, no.
Yeah, they like grinding and steeping green coffee as a health initiative. Yeah. So it's all for the chlorophylls.
Yeah.
But basically, that's that kind of grassy acidity that you get, a green kind of grassy, like raw kind of acidity. So you generally don't want to taste that in your coffee.
Is that the one that kind of elevates as it cools?
Yeah, I think so. It can kind of become quite sour, but it has a vegetal kind of character to it.
I find that is that the thing I'm experienced with a lot of like light roaster places where you get that and I'm always like, this coffee's really grassy.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And it will degrade a lot during roasting. So as you roast, it fades away and kind of breaks down. But then we've got like probably
there was one roaster who in particular, like where it's like, didn't matter if it was like what origin it was from. I'm like, I'm getting the same grassy note across all the coffees.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that happened a little bit here in Australia for a long time, that people with their filter roasts were really light roasting and you weren't getting rid of enough of that chlorogenic acid or getting enough sweetness to kind of create that better balance.
Yeah.
So then you've got citric acid. So this is like a citrus fruit style acid, lemons, oranges, things like that. You've got malic acidity, which is in Arabica coffee a lot. And malic acidity is it's often referred to as like the apple kind of acid. So think when you have a green apple and it's kind of a little bit more tart and kind of crisp than the sour or sharp of like just lemon juice. Right. Then you've got acetic acid, which I kind of talked about. This is like vinegar. So acetic acid can actually be quite complex. It can be really sour and funky, like if you just drink straight shots of vinegar. I know some people like doing it. Yeah, I bet. Think about a salad dressing, right? A little bit of vinegar in there. I know, you're always thinking about salad dressings. I can't get this guy to stop thinking about salad dressings. But you add a little bit of apple cider vinegar in, and then you've got your oil and things, and the balance of that can create a really interesting complexity. What else have we got? I think we've got
So should we get people to go home, eat some grass, a lemon, some vinegar, and an apple?
Just eat grass. Look, I probably wouldn't do the grass, but the lemon, apple, and vinegar, have some lemon. You can just have like a little bit of lemon juice in some water is kind of fine. And you'll kind of see, again, where is that activating? On the back sides of my tongue. That's where that citric acid is coming from. And how would you describe it? So I find that coffee people actually get a lot of benefit by trying to do the sensory description for non-coffee things.
Mm-hmm.
Because coffee, we get distracted by what was the brew ratio, where is it from, what should I be tasting in here? But if you just taste like some lemon juice or a fruit or chocolate or something, and then just try and describe it, suddenly you're going to be unpacking a lot of those things. So have a little bit of lemon juice in some water. Probably just eat the green apple unless you can, you've got a juicer at home and just do a green apple juice and you'll kind of get that tart characteristic. I find that malic acidity tends to be a bit broader on your palate. Like citric acid is really pointy and kind of like quite aggressive, and malic tends to kind of cover your tongue a little bit more. And then acetic acid, the same. You'll kind of have that winey kind of characteristic. Have a taste of those. I reckon that's a good way of doing it. If you really are into it, you can kind of hunt down those acids in solution or create like water solutions and add them to brewed coffee.
Right.
That's an exercise that we do in the Q course.
Oh, that's kind of interesting to kind of like heighten it in that one coffee and see what it would feel like in a coffee, I guess.
Yeah. And I guess you could potentially use other products like the folks at Apex and kind of their mineral additions that's actually changing how you might perceive the acidity and the balance in the cup.
Well, that's an that's a whole interesting approach to it as well, right? Like how it's then going to be perceived by using different minerals and stuff to, I guess, what do the minerals do? Is that like blocking certain receptors on the tongue or enhancing? Like, do you know?
Yeah, it's a little bit more about, I think some of them, we need to get Simon back in to kind of talk to us about it.
We'll get him back in.
I think that some of it changes. It depends when you add minerals. Like, is it changing the actual extraction of different components, or is it changing how we perceive it? Or is it changing the pH, the acidity level of the actual liquid? But yeah, I think for this exercise, if you're wanting to increase your kind of language connection with some of these, you probably want to isolate it and say, okay, I'm just tasting green apple. I'm just tasting malic acid. And I know now that word is this sensory experience. So when you taste another coffee, you'll be like, oh yeah, it's got a little bit of stuff that reminds me of green apple. That's probably malic acidity.
Yeah, nice.
Gonna add some in, a little drop.
Okay, some jam Apex into our coffee here.
So that's the quick tips there for taste, right? But let's talk about aroma, because that's, as we said, that's a major component of what we're doing.
Yep.
And like you were kind of saying, I'm trying to search around for these words. Having a reference set of things that you can refer to kind of have that common language is really valuable. And a number of years back, World Coffee Research actually collaborated with the Specialty Coffee Association. I believe it was some work through Kansas State University as well. And they developed the flavour wheel that we now see around a lot. And as part of the flavour wheel, they actually developed the sensory lexicon. You going to do your noise again? Lexicon.
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay, thank you. I was waiting for it. He's just so enthralled, he just forgot his warning sound.
I was going to be like, no, I know what lexicon means. And I was like, no, I don't.
Lexicon.
It's part of the lexicon.
It's the lexicon. It's the lexicon. It's basically just a dictionary of terms. So it's like an agreed upon dictionary of terms. And you can download it for free. It's pretty cool because not only is it a dictionary of terms, but it also has a product to reference and say, when you talk about blueberry, it tastes like this. And here's like literally a brand name canned blueberry product. And then to taste it, you prepare it like this. You take the blueberries out and you put it in here. And to assess the aroma, you take out the syrup and you smell that, right? Yeah. And so for every reference, it has a product and a preparation method that you can kind of use to kind of calibrate on. Now, the downfall is that, some of these products is pretty North American centric. And so if you're elsewhere in the world, you can't get hold of them. But you can do a few other things. One is these little fun kits. These are awesome. This is the Le Nez du Café.
Du café.
Yes.
The only way to cafe.
These
when
are...
you le nene like a horse. Nay.
Do we cut that? This is a Le Nez du Café. This is the nose of coffee.
Ooh, you're my nose of coffee.
I'll be your nose of coffee anytime. Yeah. Depends where you send me. But in these, they've got some really cool different little booklets here or like collections of common aromas.
Oh, it's like a leather-bound book. It's like a library.
Yeah, this is the fancy brand new edition that was just launched this year. It's pretty cool. They basically create aroma references for everyone to do specialty coffee training. So inside there's like all these numbered vials.
Oh, can I woof some of these?
Yeah, please. Here you go. This is the floral fruity kit, and there's a roasted spices nutty cocoa sweet kit, and then also a sour fermented green vegetative.
Oh, right.
And so you can basically go through and smell, and in the little cards on the side there are some reference cards that talk to you about each of the individual aromas. So they're kind of like this, a nice little aroma. For those of you just listening in, we're just opening up the new Le Nez du Café kit. It's got an expanded range of about 60 different aromas that are for Arabica and Robusta now, and you can smell these and kind of learn. You can, if you're not going to go for these full kits, you can actually create the aromas from the coffee research lexicon, just using some other kind of common household things, right? So, for example, there's things like vegetative you can use vegetal. You can just use some parsley and steep it in water. Okay. And then when you smell that, you're like, oh, that's vegetal, right? Oh, what did you just find? He keeps...
That was lime.
That was an because he's smelling lots of other little vials here.
Yeah, there's ones where but isn't it funny flavor memory? Like I was just like, ooh, margarita.
Yeah, yeah. So the benefit here, right, for those of you at home who want to build up, while Rowan's like literally building his aroma memory right now, he called it was lime, is that you can either find the references if you're in North America that are in the lexicon, prepare them, smell them, and then you have like literally something you can refer to and say, when I say this word, when I say citrus, it means this. Ribena, which is what? What is Ribena? What is Ribena? Internet? Ribena, is it prunes or is it blackcurrant? Blackcurrant. I don't know. Who drinks Ribena?
Me,
Ribena is blackcurrant, and he was correct.
These are awesome, although it is getting confused. The more I've done in like a row, I need like a break to decipher. It's like
to break up the sensory input.
I have to say though, this is I've seen and done a couple, like been around a couple of these things. This feels a lot more natural to me than I thought it was going to. Like it feels a lot more like representative of those smells.
Yeah, I think this latest edition, they've done an incredible job. As I said, they've expanded it. The old kits used to be 36. These are now 60, and they've really refreshed a lot of kind of how they're making them and what aromas are valuable for the coffee industry. Your point, you've used the word sensory memory, or what it reminds you of, and that's like a key thing as you're training, right, is to smell something. Have a go at like writing down or thinking about what does it make you think of, like the emotional memory, right? So, this makes me think of like Christmas baking or something like that. And then you can look up what the exact term is, and it might be something like clove or cinnamon. And so then every time you access that memory, which is super personal to you, it'll be a lot easier to remember. You can say, oh, what I mean is cinnamon. And you can communicate in a language that people across the world and in different parts of the coffee supply chain will understand. Because the goal here isn't to get as esoteric as we can, right? We don't want to start saying like...
I smelled this one and I was like, Calippo.
Okay.
And then I had to break down in my head. I was like, wait, what am I going to that? And I was like, I'm going strawberry, pineapple Calippo. And I'm like, oh, it's not the strawberry because I know what strawberry smells like. Oh, it's the pineapple. Because it was actually not as, if I think pineapple, I probably think intense. Like this smelling vial wasn't like this pure pineapple my face. It was quite a subtle.
And that's perfect because like for all of our international listeners, Calippo is a particular icy pole, a little ice cream, but it's pineapple flavored. Right. And so if you wrote on a cupping form, tastes like Calippo, and then ship that cupping form back to the producer in El Salvador, they'll just be going, this is what are they saying? It's like saying tastes like Vegemite. No one wants that.
Is there a fun thing in terms of those flavor notes where, and you're seeing that happen a bit more, but making it a bit more accessible for your market in that description where it's like, if you go out and you're like, oh, this tastes like elderflower, I don't know, whatever it is, that like saying to someone like, Calippo, like, oh, cool. I can get into that.
I think that's true. I think it depends who you're trying to communicate with and finding the language that will connect with them. It kind of goes back to Jack's comment is that he thinks that we're a little bit too keen on the industry impressing ourselves than impressing our customers, right? That I think that's critical is like, who are you trying to connect with? Find the language that you can use that they're going to receive and understand the experience that you're about to give them. Or if you're buying and selling coffee, then you need to kind of think about like, well, who is the audience here? If I'm shipping it across to a different culture, a different country. So yeah, if we were to recap that, the little taste experience is to think about that sweet, sour, salty, bitter kind of components, and you can do those solutions to kind of practice that. You can use tomato juice and dilutions of that to look at mouthfeel. And then from an aroma point of view, you can either get tools like the Le Nez du Café kits, or you can make up your own little references using the sensory lexicon published by World Coffee Research. And if it says like, make floral using jasmine tea bags, that's pretty easy, right? You go and find the jasmine tea, cocoa powder, easy, right? And then you can have them as actual references so that when you smell or taste something in coffee, you're like, cool, it's sweet and has sour and it has flavors of black currant, orange, and a little bit of caramel. And you're like, oh, great, I'm starting to pick up these things and build that language.
And how would I train myself with these? Just blind woof them and write down which ones you think you're smelling? And
yeah, I mean, if you're using the Le Nez du Café kits, a lot of the way that we like to try and do them is first put them into groups. So like all of the fruity ones, right? And then you want to kind of smell them, write down your aroma memory. What does it make you think of? And can you describe that? And then put the name in. So again, do it blind first, and it'll really trigger you to kind of try and find the language and then get the official name. So hopefully there's some good tips in there for just building up those basics there of sensory memory and what we're doing on our taste buds.
Amazing. I know we're probably running low on time here, but have we talked about triangulation at all?
Oh, we didn't talk about that. Yeah, I guess this is kind of how you put it into use at the end, right?
What is triangulation first, just quickly?
Yeah, so triangulation is a sensory testing kind of tool technically, we're about to put the word on here. Technically, it's a discrimination test. Discriminative.
Whoa.
We're all about discrimination.
Not here It's Just Coffee. Do not air horn that. That is not, it should be crickets or something. Yes, thank you. No discrimination.
Best way that's possible. Not, maybe discriminative is the better word for it. But essentially, it's all it is a triangle. So it's 2 cups that are the same, one is different. So 3 cups.
3 cups of coffee, 2 are the same coffee, 1 is a different coffee.
And you basically taste them and you're going, can I taste a difference? Can I discriminate between coffee A and coffee B? Right. And that's all that a triangulation test is doing. It's not like, is it because of the acid? Is it because of which one do I like more? It's just, is there a difference? Is there a discernible difference? And obviously you're looking at things like, is there more acidity in one to kind of tell if that's the difference? But the triangulation tests can be good to put into place just to really do a consistency check or a uniformity check. So you can almost challenge someone to find all the odd cups out. And if they can't, and you know that they have a palate, it probably means there isn't a difference between the 2 products. So imagine you stuffed up a roast profile. And so you got 2 roast profiles of the same coffee and you're like, should I send this out to my customers or not?
You do a triangulation, and if it's all the same, then...
And if no one can pick up the odd cup out multiple times, then you're probably safe to go. So that's kind of a useful little tool that you can play with. The Cup Tasters Championships use that. That's basically is the Cup Tasters Championships is 8 triangles, and it's who can guess the odd cup out.
I think one of the things learning here today as well that's interesting to take out is I've always just looked at it like, oh, it has acidity or not. Like I'm not like, oh, it's got a citrusy acidity or got a malic acidity or whatever. But that's probably where those elements of like green apple comes from, is actually from the acidity receptors that are bringing you to that conclusion. Whereas I'm always just thinking of like the flavor. I don't know. In my mind, flavor is just like a block thing of like apple, strawberry, whatever. I'm not thinking about the complex nature of acidity, sweetness, so like all those elements working together to get you to that.
Yeah. Look, I always kind of say to the students that I'm training is like, try not to write down like chemical or like, don't write down citric acidity, right? Or malic acidity, because that's not the sensory experience we have. Exactly what you're saying. We kind of go, oh, this reminds me of the kind of acidity when I have like a blood orange.
Yeah.
Or this is kind of a winey acidity. It's like, I'm not saying this is acidic or anything like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, bring it back to kind of real world experiences, but just kind of link it back to what style of that sensory experience it is.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think that was super helpful for me. I'm sure it's going to be
Great.
very insightful for a lot of the listeners out there. And yeah, if you haven't, I'm going to call out. Normally, we say send us an email.
Yeah.
I'm going to say if you got any questions for Ben about sensory stuff, please send them through. He is a wealth of knowledge that you normally need to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to even
Happy to
get a
be
phone
here.
call with. So honk that email hotline at hello@itsjustcoffeepod.com. And you can also hit us up on all of the socials. Share this with a friend. Make sure to subscribe if you aren't subscribed. All of these numbers help us keep pushing the pod, doing it better. We've got amazing things coming up. We're going to be at Host.
Yeah.
We're taking Host by storm. We're going to be doing live pods from there. We're going to be talking with some of the biggest names, reporting live on the WBC. So make sure to stay tuned for all of that. Ben, if you would describe me tasting notes, how would you do it?
Oh, so salty, but a little sweet.
See you next week. I love you.
Gotcha.